cap off our agenda, we'll reconvene with our esteemed speakers for a succinct discussion and engaging Q&A session. So for those who are online, I suggest that you stay all the way through to the Q&A session. And if you want to ask a question, feel free to ask it on the YouTube chat. You have to log on to YouTube for you to do that. But for those who are attending here, just raise your hand and we'll bring a mic to you. So as I set out on this initiative, I thought I had a firm grasp of what positive space film encompasses, drawing inspiration from favorites like Star Trek and Cosmos. But I'll have to admit the influx of films into the SFC Film Festival has left me truly awestruck. You'll see some of those wonderful examples of positive space films that might just ignite that creative spark within you for your very own positive space films. As we navigate through today's itinerary, brace yourselves for a voyage into the realm of positive space films and how you can embark on your own narrative odyssey into the cosmos. To enrich our understanding, we are graced with the presence of distinguished speakers who are joining us today. So let me introduce you to the first speaker, Dr. Jonathan Clark. Dr. Jonathan Clark, fondly known as John, is a distinguished geologist based in Canberra, Australia. Beginning his career as a paleontologist, he embarked on a dynamic academic journey, culminating in a PhD in Cambrian limestones. With a strong foundation, John delved into exploration, playing a pivotal role in resource researches globally, spanning gold, nickel, copper, and zinc. Beyond his terrestrial pursuits, John's intrigue with Mars sparked his involvement in multiple expeditions, showcasing his expertise in Martian geology, astrobiology, and cutting-edge exploration technologies. So please give a big hand for Dr. Jonathan Clark. Sorry, I'll just start this up. How do I play? Oh, there we go. Play. Oh, not that. Oh, sorry. I think I just stuffed up your. Yeah, that's right. My bad. Where's the play thing on this? Slideshow. Slideshow. There we go. That's it. Here's Jonathan Clark.
Okay. So, are the slides supposed to appear on the screen, or is that up? Brilliant. Bit of a time lag. Okay. As Masood's introduced me, I'm a geologist by background, and I have a long-standing interest in space exploration, particularly Mars. In fact, the last job I had, which finished up at the end of last year, was developing a conceptual and operational frameworks for the design of Mars EVA suits for a Melbourne-based aerospace company. This was funded by our space agency, hence the wind cheater. But what I want to talk to you today is about Mars analog missions and the lessons that they might have for people such as yourself, movie makers or people involved in the arts. So what's an analog mission? Well, an analog mission is a project, a program, where you explore aspects of living and working in the space environment. It could be in Earth orbit, it could be on the Moon or on Mars, by simulating the activities probably in a real-world environment. So, for example, you would go out, and this is what's happened in the Apollo program, people would go and they would simulate doing a Mars EVA in, say, Meteor Crater in Arizona or in a lava field. And this would get an idea both of the operational questions, some of the human factors questions, and some of the technology questions that are involved in developing concepts for exploring the Moon and Mars. Now, for you, for movie people, they can also have lessons for how you design your movies, because there's been no shortage of Mars movies, and for some reason, there we go. And I have to say, some of them have been rather interesting, and most have been rather bad. And avoidably bad. And I think if you want to do a film, or for that matter, any kind of artistic project that engages in a positive way with the human future, potential future in Mars exploration or any other activity, that you consider actually being involved in one of these analogue missions. Because you can now pay money and spend 2 weeks at a time at the Mars Desert Research Station run by the US Mars Society. And you can get experience firsthand of what it is like to do and live in a Mars analogue environment. I won't say which one of the Mars movies are stuck up there are better than others. You can draw your own conclusions about that. So this was the project I was last involved in. It was called the Mars 160 expedition, because the idea was we'd spend 2 80-day chunks in 2 different but similar Mars analogue stations. The Flashline Mars Analogue Research Station in the Canadian Arctic, and the Mars Desert Research Station in Utah. Similar design station, the same crew, or almost the same crew, similar work, and compare and contrast the sort of work we were doing and the lessons we might gain from that. So, this is part of what we do. We start off, for example, here we have Anushri, one of our people, simulating an EVA. She's wearing a mock-up spacesuit. It's got communications built into it. It's got ventilation built into it. And she is about to sample an impact breccia in Horton Crater in the Canadian Arctic, riddled with ice veins, full of organic matter, as part of an astrobiology project. And we have a colleague, Alexander, who is documenting her activities and also doubling as a polar bear guard. So he is toting a shotgun. And these are the 2 places we worked in. On the left, there's Utah. The MDRS is there, and the Flashline station is right up 75 degrees north on Devon Island. 2/3 the size of Tasmania, the world's largest uninhabited island. And one of the first things that when you start getting involved in a project like this, and particularly in one that's in a very, very remote area like Devon Island, is you appreciate how isolated you are. And when you're going to do talking about a Mars movie, a mission to Mars, or people living on Mars, you've really got to capture the fact that people are out on the edge of human experience. You know, when you're even in the Arctic, which is not that remote anymore, nonetheless, when that plane flies off, you realise you're stuck there. Right? If there's a fire, if there's an accident, you trip over one of those cables and break your leg. If the weather's bad, it might be 3 or 4 days before you can be medevaced out. So whatever you want to show in your film, you need to somehow capture that this is a hostile environment, an isolated environment, and people will feel that, because it'll impact, in addition to any mission rules surrounding what people are doing, it'll impact on how they respond to situations. The second thing, and a lot of the Mars missions movies don't capture this either, is grandeur. Mars, and hopefully Glenn will be showing some pictures about this, Mars is a place, the moon is a place of the most extraordinary landscapes. Some of the places we use to simulate working on the moon and Mars have the most extraordinary landscapes. This is Utah. And you need to capture that in your film. Even if it's as incidental background, you've really got to feel not only are your people in a highly isolated, remote environment, but it's going to be somewhere that's absolutely spectacular and awesome. And to give all credit to The Martian, they did that using Wadi Rum in Jordan as their environment. Something else that you get out when you actually take part in an analogue mission is you appreciate the contrast between the internal environment and the external environment. That tuna can there is your home. It's about the size of what you'd use on an actual Mars mission. It's a cylinder, 2 stories high, 8 meters across, 8 meters high. And everything you need for your life is in there. Your bed, your food, your dining, your laboratory, your bathroom, your toilet, your shower, the airlocks, all your first aid equipment, all your stores, are all within that one. That's your home. And the outside environment is hostile. Yeah? Even here, you wouldn't want to be caught out in a blizzard in that environment. And we did have some very bad weather when we were there. So again, even from these simulation missions, you begin to learn that on an actual Moon or Mars mission, you are living in a bubble of life, a bubble of habitable space in an environment that is spectacular, it's isolated, it's grand, but it's going to kill you very quickly. And somehow it'd be good, even if it's only incidentally, to be able to capture that. You're not going to, like in a certain TV series about the first Mars mission that came out in the last couple of years, you're not going to have people just casually wandering outside without telling anyone where they're going or what they're doing and doing it by themselves. Everything has to be planned. Right? Some of you might scuba dive. That's a similar counterpart as well. You're underwater is beautiful, it's wonderful, it's exciting, but if something goes wrong, you'll be dead in 2 minutes, which is only slightly slower than if you step outside a Mars habitat without a space helmet on or a pressure suit. But inside, as I said, it's home. Here's the group of people in the Arctic, an international group. Let's have fewer Americans in our movies, for goodness sake. Let's reflect the fact that the rising space powers are India, China, right? And no doubt Americans will be there, maybe one day, hopefully Australians. But let's make sure that our missions are international and they're made up of people who get on really well together. And because they're not going to be a bunch of bozos pulled together by a mad movie director, they're going to be people who have spent years living together, working together, training together, self-selecting. And so, here's the Arctic team again. Right, there's Yusuke from Japan, Paul from the US, Anastasia from Russia, Anushri from India, Alex from France, and myself here in Canberra. I'll do it again with these people. I've spent 6 months almost in a simulation of these people, and I'll do it again in the drop of a hat. Because they're like family, they're like friends. And that's something we need to capture. People aren't going to be there slitting each other's throats. Even if that does make a good movie. It's not realistic. And you celebrate together. This was in the Utah phase. We had Annalie there in the red and white dress from Melbourne. This was her birthday. And we had a party of it. Right? Rituals are important. And when we look at the International Space Station, we can find clues, people putting up pictures of their families or national icons or flags from and pennants from their university and sports teams. They personalise their space. And we need to capture that. It's going to be a sterile ICU ward-like environment. People are going to want to live there and celebrate. So capture aspects of that too. But it's going to be crowded. This is the lower deck of the Mars station. There's junk all there, stuff that you haven't unpacked, stuff you have packed up because it's got to be shipped out. You're going to have people exercising, Anastasia on the bicycle there. You've got people preparing for an EVA. Anushri and Paul getting ready to go out. Alex in orange there. He'll be the polar bear guide for the day. There's laboratory equipment there. Right? A multifunction space, all in an area that's 8 meters across. So, from me to the gentleman with the headphones over there at the most. Very crowded, very busy. And then one of my favourite scenes in Apollo 13 that actually captures this is just after the accident has happened and the oxygen tank has blown, There's a view, a cutaway shot from through the window, looking at the crew, looking out at the stuff venting into space, and then pulls away, and it really only comes across on the big screen. It pulls away, and you realise the spacecraft is just this tiny, fragile little bubble, in the emptiness of cislunar space. Hard to capture on a small screen for those who are working on a small screen, but something to think about. This is our tiny, busy, crowded, comfortable living space. One thing too, on the International Space Station and previous space stations, people didn't go outside very often because you're living in an orbital laboratory. Your work is inside, growing plants, studying the human body, studying laboratory animals, doing physical experiments, technical experiments. When we go back to the moon and onto Mars, the interest is outside. So rather than having an EVA once every couple of months, perhaps twice during a mission, to pick up some experiments from outside, to deploy some experiments, or fix something that's gone wrong, on the moon and Mars, we'll be looking at least some of the crew going outside every day. That's the aim. And that requires a different mindset. It's one of the things we are researching on our work, how that can be fitted in with your overall workload, let alone the work-life balance, which is important in space, like it is here, but also how that can be scheduled. And it's something, if we're going to talk about living in, having a movie or a documentary or a TV series or whatever it is, some sort of webcast, we somehow need to capture that we are interested in what's outside, not so much as what's inside, even though that will be part of the research program. And lastly, there's what happens at the end. Here we are in the Arctic, packing up to flying out. No runway, just a nice bit of dirt. Twin Otter can land and take off just about everywhere. And then there's the return to Earth. You may or may not want to capture that, but that's important too. How do you switch your mindset from being on a space mission? How do people do that with living back on Earth? I mean, coming back from the Arctic, the thing that struck me is flying back over Canada and all the agricultural space. Suddenly from the world's largest uninhabited island with nothing but rock and sand and mud and maybe the odd polar bear, to an environment that's entirely man-made, human-made, of fields of wheat and other crops. It's, well, what's going on down there? Literally, you've changed planets. So you need to be able to, if that's the story you want to tell, that's something you might want to capture. And again, The Martian did that quite well in the sort of the last season where he's sitting on the park bench at the academy and he says, was it good morning to the little plant shoot coming up? Where now it's just something to enjoy in terms of the prolific life, but also a few months before it had been a matter of life and death, whether or not he could get those shoots to grow. So that's it from me. Got time for questions?
We'll have it at the end.
Right, okay.
Thank you, John. Wow, that was something. So I hope that gave you guys some ideas. So you're going to hear that term a lot, analog missions, and there will be a film about that, about a group of international students who did a moon simulation. So they did an analog mission of a moon simulation. So something that we can take away as filmmakers is that we don't necessarily have to have our films based in space. It can still be missions that happen right here about space. So let me introduce you to the next speaker, Christian Doran. Christian has worked in the film and games industry for the past 15 years as a writer and producer. Since completing his postgraduate training at AFTRS, he has produced several feature films, including Me and My Mates versus the Zombie Apocalypse, starring Jim Jeffries, Lux of Love, starring Aaron Jeffrey, and most recently, he line-produced Tony the Acunis, sorry if I get that name wrong, award-winning The Furies. In 2019, he began using his skills to help people with neurological conditions engage in exercise by producing motivating virtual reality activities based on clinically proven physio techniques. Recovery VR is now a growing business that is branching into pain management, mental health, and offering a VR telehealth solution to clinicians. He is currently working on the feature film Nest and the multi-platform project, The Last Time Traveler. The Last Time Traveler. So give it up for Christian Doran. Sorry, I'll bring up your thing. Where did I put it? All right. Oh, there we go.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. So yeah, I'm coming at it. These guys, I'm coming at it from a completely different side here. I'm one of the people who make the bad science films, involved in the kind of the discussions that happen on the other end of the script, where you're just thinking, oh gosh, you know, and it kind of gets out of control. So I'll kind of talk a little bit about that and where that kind of came to. But really, it's like, where did my creativity come from? Why did I start making science fiction films? And why did I start doing virtual reality? Hopefully, I'll shed some light on that. So it's really, you know, I went from Crick Films, and I'll tell you a little bit about my career so far. And right now, I'm doing Recovery VR, which is kind of trying to develop a futuristic way to deliver therapy, and how kind of even that clinicians have a hard time swallowing the kind of the potential of the future, you know. So I'm trying to do all these things, but where did it all come from? I started with science fiction literature. I read lots and lots of sci-fi as a kid. 2001, Brave New World, Stranger in Strangeland, Robert Heinlein, you know. This is the kind of things that I always imagined that I wanted to make, right? These are the films that I wanted to make. And I knew early on that I wanted to be a filmmaker. I told older people that I wanted to be a chiropractor because nobody likes the idea of their kid getting into the arts, but there was no stopping me. As I got into film school, as I kept going, the one thing that I really decided on, which I have not achieved yet, but I am achieving, is the world of Isaac Asimov. He's my absolute literature champion, and I can see his Foundation world, his robot world, as a larger series. Apple's doing a fantastic job making Foundation at the moment, except it's gone completely off track. But it's one of those things that I can see it on the screen. It is a whole bunch of producers and writers thinking, okay, how do we make this more and more epic? And the real science and the real source literature just gets thrown on the floor and stamped on terribly. Asimov is a tough, story. Like the way he writes and what he writes about is actually tough to bring to life, and that's why it's always been a really interesting challenge to work towards. I've many unwritten adaptions of his books. So my kind of whole trajectory is to get at least one Asimov film on the screen in my lifetime. But how have I done that, and where have I been, and what am I doing to do that? I started with short films. So here's just some random screenshots of the sci-fi films that I've made. My style, I found out, turned out to be kind of a weird twisting of